Happy Sabbath.
So,
Guess where we are?
in the diamond room.
Yes. Touche. This guy's on today. The Harmony of the Gospels, part
57.
close, 46. 46. Yeah. We're getting closer. We're in Luke 18 right now. Probably another 15, 20 maybe. I don't know. We'll find out. Luke 18, verse 1. And he also spoke a parable to them to show that it is necessary to pray always and not give up. It's necessary to pray always and not give up. That is interesting. And not give up. Let's look at a couple other scriptures about prayer. 1 Thessalonians 5. First Thessalonians 5, verse 16. Rejoice always. Good. That means even in bad times. Even when you're suffering. Rejoice always. Pray unceasingly. Especially in bad times. But in good times too. Give thanks in everything. Especially in good times. Because God gives you everything. For this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. Quench not the Spirit. That's a very important one. Because we can quench the Spirit that dwells within us. God will not quench the Spirit in us. We do that. Despise not prophecies. Prophecies usually foretell something bad's going to happen. Not always. There are a lot of prophecies about Jesus Christ. Those are good ones, really good ones. But some prophecies foretell about something bad. And those bad things happen because of the sins of this earth. Despise the evil in the world, not the prophecies. Prove all things, hold fast to that which is good. Always. Don't just take it verbatim, whatever I say or whatever anybody has to say. Prove all things to yourself. Hold fast to that which is good. And abstain from every form of wickedness. That's a pretty good list. I like that list. Should have that list posted somewhere. Ephesians 6. What does Ephesians 6 have to say? Verse 18. Praying at all times, with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit. Praying at all times. Whenever you pray, always pray according to the will of God. In this very thing, be watchful with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints.
Ephesians 6.
Ephesians 6:18. Colossians 4, verse 2. Continue steadfastly in prayer, watching in it, with thanksgiving. Always. That's how you are sustained as a Christian. And finally, Matthew 26, briefly. Verse 41. Watch and pray, so you do not enter into temptation. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. Every day, watch for the temptation. Pray always that you can can escape it. Always. It is indeed necessary to pray always. That does not mean 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but consistently throughout the day, especially when you're in a situation where you don't know what to do. Now, with that in mind, Jesus goes on to a parable here. Luke 18, verse 2. Saying, there was in a certain city a certain judge who neither feared God nor respected man. This guy didn't care about nothing. And yet he had a lot of power and a lot of authority. Judges decide things. Even bad ones. And I know there's a lot of bad judges out there sometimes. And there was a widow in that city. Now, widows generally don't get to go before judges. Generally not. Not in this time setting. Usually you had to be a man there to speak for them before a judge. But there was a widow in that city, and she kept coming to him, saying, avenge me of my adversary. Now for a time he would not. But afterwards he said within himself, although I do not fear God, and I do not respect man, yet because this widow is causing me trouble, I will avenge her, lest she wear me out by her continual coming. This widow wouldn't give up. So he finally, this judge, appeased her and did what she asked. And Jesus is using that as an example about prayer. And that does not mean repetitious prayer, like saying the Lord's Prayer as people know it, as Christians know it, over and over and over again without meaning. It means asking earnestly and often, if a matter is important enough to you, and it is in regard and in alignment with God's will. Then the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge says. Hear what the unrighteous judge says. And shall not God execute vengeance for his elect, who cry out to him day and night, and patiently watch over them? Shall not God execute vengeance for his elect, who cry out to him day and night? Why would God's elect cry out to God day and night, asking for vengeance? What do you see in this world to begin with?
Wicked.
Quite a bit. Quite a bit of wickedness. Are we to shield our eyes from it and not be aware of it? I sometimes get told by others, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know anything about any of that. I just want to stick my head in the sand, live my life, love my family, and I don't care what's going on out there. How can you cause any change? How can you bring about any change if you know nothing about what's going on out there? How can you ask God to intervene if you know nothing about what's going on out there? I sent a couple of videos to people recently, and some have watched, others haven't just yet. Andrea posted one on Facebook. There is a lot of evil in this world. A lot of evil in this world. And we can't turn our back on it. We can't personally necessarily do anything about it other than pray earnestly to God about it. Sometimes we may have a hand in being able to do something by our votes, perhaps. Standing up for what is right. Standing up for what is right. But do not personally seek vengeance. God does that. Vengeance is His. Praying earnestly and often, and do not give up. I tell you that He will execute vengeance for them speedily. No, speedily to God. What is speedily to God? A day is like 1,000 years to God, isn't it? If you're praying and you are sighing and crying out to Him about this world's troubles, and you earnestly want His kingdom to come and put an end to these troubling times, He's hearing you.
An example is the cry that went out to God over Sodom and Gomorrah that He could no longer
Ignore it.
So we're a part of that.
Absolutely. And He personally went down there to have a look for Himself. Personally went down to have a look for Himself.
Makes you wonder who was crying out.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Who indeed was sighing and crying about Sodom and Gomorrah? But that's happening now. Sodom and Gomorrah is here.
It's even worse.
I would probably agree with you on that. And it's going to get even worse than that. I mean, I can't stomach what I see sometimes in this world, honestly. But I have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of it. You have to call out to God to put an end to it. You have to help those that are being victimized whenever you can. It's your duty as a Christian to be the Good Samaritan, so to speak, if you are able to do so. But the most important thing you can do is cry out to God and pray. God will speedily, in His time, that's speedily for God. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, shall He find true faith on the earth? When God went to Sodom and saw Gomorrah, did He find faith there? Even Lot was affected. Even Lot was affected by it. And he and his family are the only ones that were saved out of that. And what about Noah? Because we're talking about, the end times. The Bible talks about things will be just like in the days of Noah. People will be busy doing their own thing. And they won't even know what hit them. And who was righteous on the entire face of the earth other than Noah? Was there anybody? It was just Noah. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, shall He find the true faith on the earth? Shall He indeed? Will you hold fast yourselves? How many will stay true to God? It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. I want to read just something from Luke 11. We've done this before. Luke 11:5. Then He said to them, who among you has a friend, that he shall go to at midnight and say to him, Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine has come to me on a journey, and I do not have anything to set before him. And from within he shall answer, saying, Do not disturb me, the door has already been shut, and my children are in bed with me, I cannot get up to give you. I say to you, even if he will not rise to give him an account of being his friend, yet because of his importunity, And we covered that word before. Importunity means persistence in asking. He will rise up and give him as much as he needs. To be importunate, urgent or persistent in asking, sometimes annoyingly so. Holding tenaciously to a purpose or cause or course of action. Being resolute. God expects us to pray in a manner that we expect Him to act upon it. His timetable will be His timetable. And if you pray in that way, it has to be according to His will, of course, not selfishly, not something that you want selfishly, but something that is according to God's will. And you ask faithfully and earnestly, just like Abraham challenged him when he was going to go to Sodom and destroy the city. He reasoned with God until he got down to, well, if there was 10. Can you imagine bargaining with God? God was impressed with that. He was impressed with that. And to some who trusted in themselves, verse 9, that they were righteous and despised others, he also spoke this parable. Despised and to some who trusted in themselves, and that they were righteous. Were they really righteous, these people? No. They despised others. How could you be righteous if you're despising others? He also spoke this parable. 2 men went up into the temple to pray. The one was a Pharisee, and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed within himself in this manner: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unrighteous, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice in a week, and I give tithe of everything that I gain. And this tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven. And he beat himself on the chest, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself shall be humbled, and the one who humbles himself shall be exalted. What kind of prayer was that Pharisee doing? And what kind of prayer was this sinner doing? There's a lot you can get into that. I've read that many, many times over the years.
Eric,
Yes.
I call it the peacock prayer.
Peacock prayer.
This is just for display. Just for show.
It is.
Yeah, the guy really prayed with his heart.
Praying from your heart. That's exactly it. And if your heart is good and is filled with light, you will ask appropriately, and God will listen to you. If your heart is not right, it's full of darkness, you will not get an answer. Chapter 16, verse 15, he said to them, you are those who justify themselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is an abomination before God. Chapter 10, verse 25. Now a certain doctor of the law suddenly stood up tempting him, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The man answered and said, this guy said, and Jesus said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." He said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you shall live." Well, that's what the man said there. Sorry. But he, desiring to justify himself, this man actually answered Jesus correctly, very wisely. But within his heart, it wasn't really there. He was desiring to justify himself. And he told Jesus, Jesus asked him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And he answered correctly. Just because he answered correctly doesn't mean that he felt that way. He desired to justify himself. Justifying yourself is a normal human response, a normal human reaction, especially when you're challenged. If someone challenges you on something, trying to justify your stance is a normal response. It's a normal response. It's a human response. Justifying yourself can be a good thing, though, if it's a righteous position, if it's the right position. But you have to be careful, because sometimes what you think is justification is not. You have to be careful about that. You have to be careful about that. Being stubborn. Who here has ever been stubborn?
Kids, but they're honest. That's awesome.
Yeah. Being stubborn. Again, it depends. Sometimes stubbornness is a good thing if it's for God and it's the will of God. Sometimes stubbornness, We'll switch veins here. We'll go to John 11. John 11, verse 1. Now there was a certain man who was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, which was the town of Mary and her sister Martha. And it was Mary who later anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, "Lord, take notice, the one whom you love is sick." The sisters sent somebody to him to let him know that Lazarus was sick. And they were asking for him to be made well. But after hearing this, Jesus said, "The sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it." Could Jesus have healed Lazarus right there and then when he heard the message? He didn't have to go to Lazarus, did he? No. Just like when that centurion came, right? A show of faith, a word spoken by Jesus, and it would have been done. Jesus sent this message. Jesus told this messenger, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God, so that he himself can be glorified by it as well." This is what he told that messenger. So that messenger went back to Mary and Martha with that message. By the time that messenger got there, Lazarus was dead. Where Jesus was was about a day's journey from Bethany. See if I can find where that was. Yeah, he was in Bethabara, across the Jordan where John was baptizing. It's the same place. It's about a day's journey from Bethany. So by the time this messenger got to Jesus, a whole day had passed, and by the time he got back to Mary and Martha, another day had passed. Lazarus was dead. And this was the message he had for Mary and Martha, that the sickness is not unto death, but Lazarus is dead. How would Mary and Martha have taken this news? Jesus just said he's not going to die. That's what they would have thought. Jesus said he's not going to die, but he's dead. How do you think they would have perceived that? What kind of testing of their faith was that? Specifically, when Jesus sent that message, it's for the glory of God and for the glory of the Son of God. Lazarus will not be dead. The end result of this will not be death for Lazarus. That's what he said. Yet Lazarus is dead. You think about that, because as the rest of the story plays out, you see this. They did not understand. Mary and Martha and Lazarus were very close to Jesus. Very close. There was a loving relationship. We went through that already some time ago. Can't remember how many parts ago it was. But Jesus spent time at their home. Now Jesus loved Martha, see? And her sister and Lazarus. And yet he let Lazarus die. Letting somebody die that's close to you, when you have the power to not let that happen, when you have the power to help them, even though he's Jesus Christ, he's the Son of God, and he can have power over death, still, it's a moving thing. Death is not a fun thing. Not at all. Death is an enemy. But when he heard that he was sick, he deliberately remained in the same place for 2 days. Who do you think instructed Jesus Christ to do that? His Father. Jesus was always doing his Father's will. He was always in communication with his Father. And his Father would have told him, this is what you're going to do, so that I can be glorified and you can be glorified, and that they will know that you are the Son of God, that you are Jesus Christ, and that you have power over death, because his own death was shortly to happen. The Passover in which he was to be sacrificed is not that far off from here. It was very important for this event to occur, for these people to witness that. Jesus Christ has power over death. Death is not going to hold anyone that has Christ in their life. And after this, he said to the disciples, after the 2 days, let us go into Judea again. So it's going to take another day for him to get there. The disciples said to him, Master, the Jews were just seeking to stone you, and you're going there again? Well, the disciples knew about the request to heal Lazarus. And yet they're wondering why he's going to go there. Because they know that the Jews are seeking to kill him. You got to wonder if they were asking him, well, why don't you just heal him now? You don't have to go there. Who knows what the conversation was with them there? But they were obviously concerned about his decision to go there, because Bethany is about 2.5 kilometers away from Jerusalem. It's very close. Just a stone's throw. So they were concerned about that because he was risking his life. That's what the disciples were perceiving here. Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world. But anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." Well, that's an interesting response. That's an interesting response. What did Jesus say about working while it is light before? And about the darkness?
You don't stumble in the light.
Yes, the light definitely illuminates things, for sure. When Jesus talks about the light and the darkness, he's talking about light being God's truth, darkness being deceived about it, not understanding God's truth. When you're in the light, you can do good work. When you're in the darkness, you can do nothing but stumble around. God had a timetable. His Father had a timetable. The disciples were concerned about him going to Bethany at this time, because it's only 2 kilometers from Jerusalem, where they knew the Jews were seeking after him to kill him. Jesus knew it was not his time yet. Nothing would happen to Jesus. Jesus knew that. The disciples did not. The disciples did not understand that. Jesus had more work to do, and this particular work was a very important one for the glory of his Father and for the glory of himself.
Another interesting thing there is when the request was made for him to come and heal,
Yep.
he hung around for 2 more days. His disciples' reaction of, well, why are you going now when they want to kill you? Him not going
Right away.
right away, they might have understood it to mean, well, he's staying away from the Jews. That's why he's not going in spite of this request from a very good friend.
Yeah.
So when he was saying, you know,
Let's go.
yeah, that was like totally,
They would they're like, what? What's going on? Why didn't you go right away? Or why didn't you heal him from here? All you have to do is speak the word. Right? Why are you going there? And 2 days have already passed. What are you thinking? They want to kill you over there.
they might have assumed that he didn't go because of that threat.
Of course. Absolutely. That's the only way it would make sense in here. But it's interesting, again, because they've been with him now, what, 3 years? And they still didn't get it. If you're with Jesus close, like family, constantly with him, well, most of the time with him anyway, 3 years, how much would you understand? How much faith would you have? Even his closest disciples lacked the amount of faith that was necessary for them to do the work. This miracle that Jesus was about to do with Lazarus was very important for his disciples' faith, because shortly Jesus was not going to be there anymore. The light would be taken away. And if his disciples did not have the proper amount of faith that was necessary to carry on the ministry, where would they be? We constantly went through faith and the lack of faith the disciples had, and Jesus chastising them about it many times. How many lessons did they need? They needed a lot. And they needed to see this very one. Because healing someone who's sick, but alive, is far different than raising someone from the dead. Far different. To hammer it home for his disciples was for them to see him raise someone from the dead. So when he says, 3 days after I die, I will raise up again, they would see and believe. And yet, they still didn't quite understand that. Because when he died, they were afraid. They didn't quite believe that he rose from the dead. Even Thomas wanted to stick his finger in his side. How much convincing do they need? How much convincing do we need?
Sorry to interrupt.
No?
It's almost displaying that in the nature that we have in ourselves is never and never will be enough. We have to have that spirit to do things.
We do?
You know, or we can't do it. Our natural.
Yeah, they didn't have the Spirit in them. Not like we do right now. Not until the day of Pentecost. When they did, they were a mighty force, were they not? When the Spirit came to them, they were a mighty force. And they did amazing things. Before that, on their own, before they had God's Spirit in them, you can see how weak they actually were. How poor their faith actually was. How much trust they had. It was limited, wasn't it? You look back in one of the examples in the Old Testament, Daniel, for instance, in the lion's den, right? And that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were, I think I'm saying those guys' name, right? They defied. Was it Nebuchadnezzar? And they were thrown into this furnace. He says, well, if you're going to do that, I mean, either God will save us or we won't, but we are not going to bend our knee to you. Do you think the disciples at this point in time would have gone into that fire like that? I don't know. I mean, according to what we've been reading, it doesn't seem that way, does it? That kind of faith that you can see sporadically throughout the Old Testament, there was only a few. There was only a very few, a handful, that were righteous like that. A handful that had that kind of faith. There wasn't that many. Only Noah, for instance, in the whole world. These guys were with Jesus for 3 years, and they didn't have that faith with them yet. 3 years. How long had we been walking in the faith? How long? How far along are you in your faith? How strong is it? If you had faith like a mustard seed, you could make a mountain move, cast into a sea. Are you able to do that? How much faith do you have? Pray constantly. I have John 12:35-36 written down here, so let's find out what I said here. Yes, then Jesus said to them, yet a little while the light is with you, himself. Walk while you have the light, so that the darkness will not overtake you. For the one who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, him, so that you may become the children of light. Jesus spoke these things and then departed from them and was in hiding. Going to be killed there. The light is God's truth. John 11 again, verse 11. These things he said, and after that he said to them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going so that I may awaken him. Obviously the disciples didn't understand that. And his disciples said, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will get well. Maybe they were not up to speed with Ecclesiastes. The Bible talks about death as asleep. Jesus had to tell them plainly. Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he was speaking of the rest of sleep. For this reason, Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus has died. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, in order that you may believe. But let us go to him. Why would he be glad for their sakes that he was not there? That they may believe. Well, if he was there, how would he get out of not healing Lazarus? He purposely stayed away so that Lazarus would die. That's what his Father wanted him to do. And he's glad for their sakes because they need to see this miracle. They need to see that miracle so that they may believe that he has power over death. Then Thomas, called Didymus, apparently Didymus is the Greek word for twin, and Thomas is the Aramaic word for twin, I think. Something like that. So, same. I don't know why John had to put that in there. Oh, maybe we'll ask John when we see him. Said to his fellow disciples, Let us go also so that we may die with him. Thomas assumed that if Jesus went there, he was going to die. The Jews were going to take him and kill him. But he was a brave man. He was going to go with them, even though he believed that he was going to be killed. If that's going to happen, we will be by your side, and then if you're going to die, we're going to die right beside you fighting. That's what Thomas was thinking. He didn't understand still. But he sure was a brave guy, just like Peter. And so when Jesus came, he found that he had already been lying in the tomb for 4 days. Jesus expected that. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs away. Furlong's not that far, it's like 200 meters or something like that. 15 furlongs, that's about 2.5 kilometers. If you make the calculations. And many of the Jews had come to join those around Martha and Mary, so that they might console them concerning their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus had sent the message. Lazarus, the end result with Lazarus will not be his death. What part of that, Martha, don't you understand? But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. She does have faith. She does have faith. Jesus said to her, Your brother shall rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. That's a profound statement. I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. That says a number of things. Number one, Martha understood a lot, a great deal about God's plan. That there is a resurrection of the dead. And it happens at a certain time. At the last day. Now for those modern Christians, they read this verse 24. How do they reconcile that? I know that he will rise again at the last day. Which means Martha did not have the understanding that Lazarus was in heaven somewhere, and that Jesus would remove him from heaven and put him back into a physical body. What sense does that make? And yet that's what the worldly Christians believe. That's what the scholars believe. The scholars actually believe that when Lazarus died, he was dead for 4 days, that Lazarus spent 4 days in heaven. That's what they believe. That Lazarus was in heaven for 4 days. Now, why would Jesus remove Lazarus from heaven, if heaven is where we want to be, and bring him back to this miserable existence in that world at that time, when, hey, if he's already made it? But that's precisely what they think. That Lazarus was in heaven for 4 days, and Jesus removed him, said, no, it's not your time to be there. You got to live some more in this body. That doesn't make any sense. So that he could live a couple more decades with his sisters and those around him in this form before he died again and went back to heaven? That doesn't make any sense. And what is a resurrection anyway, if you're already living somewhere else, in heaven, or in hell, or in purgatory, or wherever? What does resurrection mean? From the dead. If you're dead, you're dead. You're not alive somewhere else. Modern Christians cannot get that through their head. They just don't understand that. That's not a concept they get. I've read what scholars have said about this very verse, and that's what they think. Lazarus was in heaven for 4 days, and Jesus brought him back out. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, shall live again. Shall live again. But I thought Christians think that if you die, you're still living, but just in a different state. Either in heaven, hell, purgatory, or wherever. Jesus says, oh, they will live again. Not that even though they've died, they're still living somewhere else, and I'll transfer them from one place to another. That's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying. How does that make sense? Does that make sense? That he'll transfer them from one place to another? That's not what he's saying. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, dead means dead, shall live again. When? At the last day. At the last day. Have this conversation with a modern Christian. They won't get it. They might even get angry with you for even talking about it that way, but they won't get it. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall not die forever. Shall not die forever. You can't get around these words. If they're dead, they're dead. But if you believe in him, it will not be forever. Lazarus was dead for 4 days. That's all he spent in the grave, dead. Not forever, because Jesus Christ is the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? He asked Martha. She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who has come into the world. Absolutely. This was why he had to do this miracle. So that they could believe this very thing, that he is the resurrection and the life. And if you believe in him, you will not die forever. You will die. It's appointed everyone to die once. But if you believe in him, you will not die forever. You will be raised again to eternal life. She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come in the world. And after saying these things, she went away and secretly called her sister Mary, saying, The teacher has come and is calling for you. When she heard this, she rose up quickly and came to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha had met him. Therefore, when the Jews who were with Mary in the house, consoling her, saw that she had quickly risen up and gone out, they followed her, saying, She is going to the tomb to weep there. Then Mary, when she came where Jesus was, and saw him, fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. See, she didn't get it yet either. As a result, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in spirit and was himself inwardly moved. He didn't groan out loud and weep out loud. It was within himself. But he was deeply moved by this. And he was indignant about death. Death is not going to win. He is the resurrection and the life. And he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Now, in the Greek, this saying, Jesus wept, meant inwardly. That's what that word means in the Greek. We get the perception here that tears were streaming down his face and he was in a terrible state weeping. No. The Greek word does not mean that. But inside, he was. He was deeply moved because he loved Lazarus. He loved Martha. He loved Mary. And he could see the torment that they were going through. Death is a terrible thing. And it even moved him to that point. Even though he was going to raise him up shortly. Anybody see that little boy on the beach that was being carried away? Was he 3?
His brother.
Yep. His brother was 5. Another Syrian. You didn't see that, did you? There was an illustration, I think it was in The Sun, where the political cartoonist had this guy. It was the Earth with feet. It was walking on a beach and was holding that little child, and the Earth was weeping. The whole Earth, everybody that knows about this. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. But death will not win. That little boy will be resurrected again, along with his other brother and his mother and everyone else who died on that water and drowned. Then the Jews said, See how much he loved him. But some of them said, Could not this man, who had the power to open the eyes of the blind, also have caused this one not to die? How much faith was there? Doubting him again, out loud. And they're right before the tomb. They thought Jesus was there to mourn. That's what they thought. Jesus was there to mourn. Because of this, Jesus again groaned within himself. Because they didn't trust him. They didn't believe in him. As he came to the tomb, that was a cave, and a stone was laid over the opening. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of him who had died, said to him, "Lord, he already stinks, for it has been 4 days." "What are you doing?" she's saying. Even then, she didn't understand what Jesus was about to do. Why do you want to go in there? He reeks. He's decomposing. You can mourn here, outside with us. You don't have to go in there. That's what she was thinking. Jesus said to her, "Did I not say to you that if you will believe, you shall see the glory of God?" How many times do I have to tell you? I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, shall live again. You will see the glory of God if you believe. Then they removed the stone from the tomb where the dead man had been laid. And Jesus lifted his eyes upward and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." He always heard Jesus, the Father did. And Jesus was always thankful for that. "And I know that you hear me always. But because of the people who stand around, I say this, so that they may believe that you did send me." And after he had spoken these things, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." And he who had been dead came forth, his feet and hands bound with grave clothes, and his face bound up with a napkin. Jesus said to them, "Loose him and let him go." That's huge. And many of the Jews who had come to console Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. How could you not? How could you not? Who else could raise anybody from the dead? Nobody's been able to do that. Only God can do that. Jesus Christ. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. They were really worried, these ones. They were really worried now. And the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, "What shall we do? For this man does many miracles." Instead of praising God about it, they were plotting, what are we going to do about this man?
Worried about the political consequences.
Yes, they were. And Caiaphas even says so right here. We're coming to that. If we allow him to continue in this manner, all will believe in him. And the Romans will come and take away from us both this place and the nation. They were worried about themselves, about their situation, the political. A man just came from the dead. Thousands are being healed. And what is their concern? That the Romans will come and do something? If this man could heal anyone he wants, can raise people from the dead, do you think he would fear the Romans? Do they not remember Egypt? Pharaoh and his armies? Did they not teach the people about that? The power of God? Their entire Egyptian army, the greatest force the world had seen to that point, gone. The land destroyed utterly. The power of Egypt gone. And they're worried about the Romans? What kind of faith did they have? They didn't understand at all. But a certain one of them, Caiaphas, being the high priest that year, this guy was a Sadducee actually, said to them, "You have no understanding, nor consider that it is better for us that one man die for the people, that the whole nation should perish." This man is already declaring this man has to die. This man, Jesus, has to die so that our nation can survive. He also said something very prophetic, didn't he? One man has to die so that the whole world will not perish. You can look at it in that larger sense. One righteous man, the Son of God, has to die for the people so that the whole world will not perish. Caiaphas didn't even understand what he said there. He was correct in what he said there, but he did not even understand what he said there, the prophetic sense of it. Now he did not say this of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation. He didn't know he did that. He didn't know he prophesied that. Not just that nation, but the world. And not for that nation also, but not for that nation only, but also that he might gather together into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. Therefore, from that day they took counsel so that they might kill him. For this reason, Jesus no longer walked publicly among the Jews, but went away from there into the country near the desert to a city called Ephraim. And he stayed there with his disciples. It was not yet time, but the time is coming shortly for him. That concludes part 46.